Actually forcing white shelter on a back shelter. Pragg might have to move his knight back to open up that little window in order to open up that little window. Slide the queen window because if you slide the queen up to h6 of some lines where I could conceive of some lines where that trouble that might be a little bit too audacious. That might be a little bit too audacious. A little bit too audacious. Satisfies the demands of the position. Satisfies the demands. Satisfies the demands of the position.
Forward to f5. Forward to f5.
Wow, quite quickly he made this decision. Wow, I was trying to highlight how do we. I was trying to highlight how do we grab only on h6, what I find is knight f7 look at just to highlight, yes, just to highlight, yes, what a crazy construction that this is. But this is a move that if it works, this is a move that if it works, this is a move that if it works, it was a great choice. We will putting the pressure on Magnus, putting the pressure on Magnus, putting the pressure on Magnus. On the other hand, manages to neutralize the white's initiative, white's initiative, bishop takes f5, bishop takes f5, and then he takes f5. Is that possible? Trying to make that possible? Trying to make possible some control over the some squares that some squares. I feel like this is because I feel like this is because I feel like this is so important. Not for the move king g7. I feel king g7. I feel seriously under pressure. Seriously under pressure. But eventually stopping eventually and kind of ideas with queen f6. Ideas with queen f6. Ideas with queen f6.
White's attack starts to run out of steam. They're lacking. Pragg is really lacking. Pragg is really lacking a minor force. A knight in dark square. So maybe a dark white could play a dark square. White can play like rook accumulating, for example. Accumulating one, for example. But resorting to a move like that, that means that the worst is behind Carlsen. The worst is behind Carlsen. Did Pragg rush with this thematic move? It's a very thematic move. He is kind of riding the fumes of his attack. He might have given up that knight a little bit too early. You know, the ostensibly more reserved knight would have kept better practical chances. Carlsen seems ready to make his move. He can play f6. He can play f6. That might be a little bit too weakening. King g7 does seem like the most precise defensive move. Grown accustomed finding moves like Magnus finding moves like king g7 on the regular.
Yes, I also feel body language like he's relieved. He feels like all right, yes, on the board. King g7 on the board.
Yeah.
That is the desired stability for black, and especially for black, and especially we are talking about the if you are constantly asked questions which aren't easy to answer,
I was going to say after queen f6, queen g4. In fact, rook f2, I think makes a lot of sense from White's perspective. You would like to play queen g4. You would like to keep the queens on the board. And ostensibly, after knight takes f5, e4 wins the knight. But the issue is this vulnerable placement of the queen on g4. Black's knight can go forward to e3, but even safer is to go back to h6. And Black gets out of the pin, counterattacking White's queen. And look at just the heroic defensive role exerted by the king on g7, which protects the queen on f6. And that means, you know, the desperado sacrifice on h5 leads absolutely nowhere. Also, queen takes f2, and Black will emerge with an extra exchange. So this is out of the question, which means queen f6 is a major positional threat, because if the queens go off the board, I think that we might start talking about a slight advantage for Black in the endgame.
Exactly. Yes, somehow, maybe because Pragg rushed too quickly with knight f5, did he simply miss the move king g7? Or he did not miss the move king g7, but he forgot that there might be a threat from Black with queen f6. It could have easily been that he had foreseen the structure Yeah, because especially when you make up your mind quickly, you think about the structure and you think like, all right, I have all the time in the world to double my rooks on the f file. Knight takes f5 is never a problem due to the pin. And I'm going to insist on going f6. If black ever plays the move f6, then white queen just falls back to g4 and the kingside structure will be very vulnerable. Everything depends on this wonderful queen f6 resource.
And Pragg has shown an ability to adjust pretty seamlessly to the new demands of the position. You know, his game against Hikaru Nakamura comes to mind. His first classical game where he was better throughout, or the game in which he was black. He was better throughout, he was pressuring, and at some point Hikaru took over the initiative on the board and on the clock. Pragg was able to take a deep breath, gather himself, and put together an excellent defensive display to hold the position. He needs to do that here. He might not even be worse on the board. I think it's very important, Peter, to clarify, probably Pragg is not worse here, but the trend of the game, we talked about this yesterday, the trend of the game favors black because Pragg was just attacking, he was just paralyzing black, and suddenly he's dealing with a very nasty positional threat, and the question of him being worse has suddenly been raised. Can he calm himself down and play an objective, patient move like rook a to e1?
Very tough, because I also don't know exactly what does this move really do to the position. Rook a1.
Yeah.
Why? First question: can't black do the same with queen f6? What is the difference?
Apparently,
no, he can't. Wow. So now queen g4, knight takes f5, e4, knight h6, and wow, just queen d7.
Ooh, and you take the b7 pawn. But why was this move impossible in a different version? Like, why is the rook being on e1 necessary to make this move possible? Maybe it's because after queen h4, you're able to play knight d7, apparently queen d8. And if you take b7, knight g4 hits the rook on f2 and generates a lightning attack on the king side. It's the fact that the rook on f2 would be really vulnerable, whereas the rook on e1 would enable white to exert pressure on black's center.
Wow, this line basically illustrates how difficult and complex this position is.
I'm looking at it and I still don't fully understand, Peter, like why rook a1 is so crucial. My guess is that we might see a queen trade. I think Pragg might bite the bullet and say, listen, after queen takes f6, maybe I can quickly go e4. I find it hard to believe that white is in big danger in the endgame, but obviously an endgame would play right into Magnus Carlsen's biggest strength, particularly in the rapid time control.
Yeah, the move that comes to my mind is that what happens after e4. It looks like maybe the most natural human move if we see that we can't follow it up with rook f2. Magnus also leaning back on his chair, he definitely feels that he got stability, and this is what really matters for him. And the ball is back on Pragg's court.
For sure. And the thinking time, I think, says it all. Pragg is now down on the clock. Gone is the time advantage that he built up with his excellent opening preparation. I think it's an encouraging sign that he's taking his time. It means that he senses that the trend of the game has reversed in black's direction and that it's important for him to make a stabilizing move. I'm with you, Peter. I think e4 is the move most grandmasters would play in a blitz game because it's thematic. You connect your pawns. Of course, you weaken the f4 square, but that doesn't seem particularly essential.
Yes, fighting for the center, making sure that the bishop from b3 is getting closer to the game. E takes d5 is always an idea. Then already the move rook a1 will be so much more natural. And Pragg goes king h1. All right, he just makes a neutral move.
Okay, but queen f6 is very likely to follow. And Magnus might play that move fast because he had so much time to gather his thoughts while Pragg was thinking. I feel like queen f6 forces a queen trade, and then king h1 might actually be counterproductive because in the endgame, in general, you want your king closer to the center.
This is the feeling I'm getting, that with king h1, does actually Pragg signal that he completely misses black's resource with queen f6?
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, I'm shocked for the fact, because of course, thanks to computer, we have